Opioid use can start at a very young age. The environment in which a child lives can be one of the chief risk factors. Exposure to opioid use within the home, early initiation of an opioid through use of a prescription, friends using opioids, and having easy availability of opioids are leading causes for opioid misuse. These generate a misperception that drug use is normal. Contributing risk factors include a history of mental health problems such as depression or anxiety, a child's perception of low parental affection, and a lack of family support all contribute to poor academic success, and that is another risk factor. Recent research indicates that when a child uses heavy social media, this triggers higher levels of depression and anxiety. There's also an increased exposure to pro-substance use subject matter, and this strengthens drug use normalization. So, what do we look for? What are the behavioral signs of opioid use disorder adolescents and teens might exhibit? We want to look for sudden and new behavior changes, such as isolation from their typical friends, aggressive behavior or personality changes, changes in exercise or participation in sports activities. Are they sleepy in class? Do they have sudden changes in their grades? Or are they withdrawing from class participation completely? Do they exhibit differences in weight without talking about being on a diet? Or do they have sudden changes in hygiene and appear like they have a persistent flu? Physical signs may include track marks on their arms or their legs, glazed or bloodshot eyes, and pupils that are larger or smaller than usual, appearance of being drunk or having cravings that are suddenly out of balance, or changes in their sleep patterns. These are just a few of some of the physical signs that we should be looking for in our children. Early warning signs can be difficult to spot, so when you know your student, their likes and dislikes, and their friends, signs of trouble are easier to see. The student's friends will be aware of drug use or misuse long before any adults will. Fact 1. Family. 2. Age. 3. Cravings. 4. Tolerance. And lastly, surroundings. Let's examine how family life can be a risk factor. When there's poor family relationships and drug and alcohol use within the family that children are exposed to early on, as well as neglect, these can all create an early stress environment which causes poor stress reactivity, poor impulse control, and negative behavioral patterns that impact academic functioning. Children learn empathy, impulse control, anger management, and problem-solving skills by being provided a safe, stable, nurturing environment. These skills have a protective effect and buffer against the impact of stress and trauma. Parental employment, adequate housing, and having social services support can lead to improved academic functioning, having a good social development, improved learning, memory, mood, and an ability to cope with stress for those children who are in low-income situations. However, it's very important to realize that even for families in good economic positions, a lack of parental attachment and a lack of stable, nurturing relationships can result in children feeling neglected. These children have better resources and freedoms to obtain opioids. Prenatal intervention provides education and how parents can establish a safe, stable, and nurturing environment, regardless of income status. This helps to reduce neglect and abuse, which positively impacts cognitive function and behavioral outcomes that can last throughout the teen years. Children's brains are still developing. The normal brain development in teen years creates a perfect storm for the onset of substance use disorder. The developmental pattern allows for the youth to take risks and figure out who they are, and that's normal. But because the prefrontal cortex is not yet developed, adolescents are more vulnerable to the lasting effects of substance use, including an increased risk for addiction. When using alcohol or drugs early on, teens can develop physical cravings and tolerance to the substance used. The craving is that feeling or that urge that tells the brain to seek out a response, and that response motivates the act to fulfill that craving, and then they get that reward. The dopamine is released, which satisfies the craving, and that feeds the feedback loop. The external or internal triggers create further cravings. Then they need more and more to gain the same reward. The last point of our facts is surroundings. Surroundings are the most noticeable warning sign of substance use. Exposure to the use of alcohol and other drugs, whether within a family or a peer group, normalizes the use, and kids believe it's safe. It's what everyone is doing. In these surroundings, children and teens have access to substances, which increases vulnerability for first-time use and continued use. When parents and caregivers and teachers discuss the risks of drug abuse with children, the likelihood of misuse is reduced by 50%. Parents and teachers acting as positive role models in this environment are critical. So set a good example. The positive behavior you show may dramatically impact a teen's perception of alcohol and drugs.